All right, welcome to Malvern Books, everyone. Thanks for coming out on a Sunday. I'm going to introduce our first writer and poet. Nori Rose is a writer, poet, multimedia artist, witch, and unabashed Scorpio, who draws inspiration from both sides of the veil. She graduated with honors from Austin Community College in 2014 with an Associate's of Arts degree in creative writing and earned her BA in English in creative writing from the University of Texas in 2017. Please welcome Nori.
Hello, everybody. It goes without saying, but thank you so much to Amber for allowing me to come and read a bit of my own book today at her book launch. I'm also really excited for the sequel because I helped edit the original prequel, so it's pretty cool to see it evolve and come full circle like this. So today I am going to be reading you the first chapter of my forthcoming novel, The Dreaming Hour. This is a modern day reinterpretation of the Sleeping Beauty story with an Austen twist. So, chapter 1. Stay tuned for more if you like it. The day Rosie earned her GED, she filled the back seat of her Buick with dreams and didn't stop speeding until she crossed the Brazos County line. Even though it was the middle of May and the temperature was already in the high 90s, she wore a gray sweater over her thrifted white sundress with blue lines printed across the bottom. It made her feel hot and muggy even with the AC blasting. Her hands shook. They left a faint sheen of sweat on the steering wheel. From fear, excitement, or the itch that had become part of her anatomy, she couldn't say. But she took deep breaths and sang songs from her favorite kids' movies to herself the whole way. Reach for the light, when you believe, almost there. When she reached the point in the highway where flat farmland suddenly lurched up into green hills, her shoulders finally relaxed. Almost home. She rolled the words surrounding her head over and over until they lost their shape, dissolved into a warm yellow light that dripped down into her veins and filled her with an excited peace. It had been 3 years since she had seen the house where she spent her childhood, the city of her birth that still managed to light up her dreams even when she had tried to bury the memories under a cloud of opium. But today, with the wide Texas skies sizzling blue above her, her hair whipped by hot wind through the cracked window, the last of the spring bluebonnets and Indian paintbrushes dotting the fields along the highway, Rosie felt something unknown. She let the memories float up again, one by one, taking time to savor the beauty and the loss in each. Sitting on a quilt under the Congress Avenue Bridge with Grammy, Rose, and her mom, Faith, waiting for the whirlwind of Mexican free-tail bats to fill the twilight like 1,000 musical notes. Faith taking her to put flowers on Stevie Ray Vaughan's statue on their way to Barton Springs. She taught Rosie to swim there, the initial shock of the 68-degree water soon forgotten in the fun of pretending they were mermaids and hunting for the elusive salamanders, followed by a Sandy's frozen custard on the way home. The heavy scent of mountain laurel that hung in the spring air like grape soda-scented perfume. The stories Grammy told of growing up on a farm back when the city was just a town, when she wore big tinted glasses and sang for her supper at Threadgills and later Antone's with her band, the Ruby Slippers, how she once had beers with Janis Joplin. The memories of the house, however, she would save. For 3 years, Faith had rented it out to various tenants, and Rosie didn't want to fill it back up with her childhood, only to have it forced out with one look at the change. Still, Faith could have said no. Gratitude and something else pushed at the back of Rosie's eyes as she turned onto I-35 South when she saw the crystal tip of the Frost building rise up like a milagro charm nestled in green arms. With their highlights on in the early dusk, Rosie thought that the cars looked like tiny stars moving down a concrete river. She allowed herself a smile. The neighborhood was still lit by soft green light of trees. The pale pink house with the rabbit ear TV sets and ceramic lizards and butterflies attached to the roof still stood at the end of the street. The rosemary bushes and dinosaur agaves still grew in the front yard. Rosie remembered Grammy taking her along to comb through junk stores and garage sales for TVs for the roof. About all the darn things are good for is decoration, Grammy had said. She had been convinced that TV rotted the brain, and even though it had caused trouble for Rosie at school when she was left out of cafeteria conversations about the newest popular shows, she was grateful to Grammy for the hours getting lost in books and searching for fairy houses in the backyard. Without real, solid memories of a time when she was actually happy, she wondered if she would even be alive. She parked in the granite driveway and unloaded her tiny blue suitcase. She paused at the front door. She thought about all the times she had entered and exited here, her child hands pushing past it to feel the first taste of summer or to dig her hands into rain-wet spring soil, leaving on excursions to the farmer's market with Grammy on Sundays, running inside to escape the heat of summer or the chill of winter. The last time she'd entered to spend a week with Grammy when she needed to escape Faith and her new husband, Phil, the last time she'd exited. She rested a hand on the doorknob. She had been so sure she would never see this house again. Stepping inside made it hard to breathe. White walls had replaced the murals she and Grammy had painted in days gone by. Grammy had become an artist in her old age, and the walls her canvas. The living room sunflower fields, the kitchen wisteria garlands, Rosie's bedroom the inside of a pink shell. She lingered in the spot where they had once stood on ladders and painted the ceiling together. Grammy covered her half with a turquoise sky, golden sun, little white cloud puffs. Rosie's half with stars, moon, galaxy glowing against violet night. We're recreating the real Sistine Chapel, Grammy had said, dipping her brush into the bucket Faith held under the rung. Looking back, Rosie found it hard to imagine her mother standing in paint-smeared overalls, hair flecked with specks of pink and purple. Part of her wondered, as she lingered through familiar rooms heavy with the unfamiliar weight of strange people, if her memories were even accurate anymore. The door to her old bedroom was closed. She was afraid to touch the doorknob, as if some electrical jolt might reject her. She remembered the breathing exercises she'd learned at detox and took another deep belly breath. It's just a doorknob, she whispered to herself. Just a room. Only it wasn't. Her childhood twin bed was still in place, but the belongings that she had left behind, Faith had either donated or packed away in storage. The pink shell that had sheltered her sleep for so many years was now a stark white slab of wall. The Winnie the Pooh curtains Granny had sewn and switched out with plastic white window blinds. The house is mine again, she repeated to herself. The house is mine again. She unpacked her copy of Grimm's Fairy Tales. The tattered green cover still glimmered with traces of gold letters. Rosie traced a finger over the faded loops and ghostly tree motifs as she had done countless times throughout her life. As a little girl waiting for Grammy to read at bedtime, after Faith had moved her to College Station and she had to lull herself to sleep on the nights when Faith and Bill fought, after she was done with a client and needed to feel something, anything, solid in her hands. She ran a finger over the crinkly yellowed edges of the pages, trying not to think of the ones she had torn out. She lifted a chunk of paper with the crescent of a fingernail. The book opened onto Sweetheart Roland. She read through the story of the girl who tricked her stepmother into beheading her own child, who turned herself into a duck, a rose, a stone, to escape the past and to save her lover, even though he forgot all about her. Rosie wished she could change herself into something else, even if only temporary. Fear shot through Rosie's torso like a sharp knife. Her ears rang with the ghost of another name, called in a voice laced with rage. Briar! Briar Rose! She put her hands over her ears and lowered her head between her knees. Inhale, exhale. Another knock. Long exhale. Her heart beat against her chest like a bird against cage bars as she tiptoed down the walk of the front door. Earth below, sky above, fire within, she whispered. Earth below, sky above, fire within. She peered through the peephole. On the other side was a woman with long silver hair and purple cat-eye glasses. She held a red casserole dish in one hand and something Rosie couldn't see in the other. Rosie's mouth felt dry. She licked her lips and wished she had lip balm. The woman knocked again. Rosie crouched behind the door. She heard an odd scuffling noise outside. Listen, sugar, I know you're in there, the woman said. Her voice was loud and firm, but her tone was not harsh. I just wanted to say hello. I brought you some food. I'll leave it on the porch. Rosie felt queasy, but her face flushed in embarrassment. In her gut, she felt the woman meant her no harm. Still, she did not open the door. Who are you? My name's Velvet, Velvet Campbell. I live in the green bungalow 3 houses down on the left. My number's on the dish. You feel free to call or come by if you need anything, Rosie. Rosie felt her throat tighten. How do you know my name? I moved in about 3 months after you left with your mom. Rose made me feel right at home in the neighborhood. She used to walk down to my place and help me work my flower beds. They never looked better, I tell you what. I've tried to replicate her technique, but she just had some kind of magic I don't. And I help her out sometimes there when things got Tough, you know, like driving her to doctor's appointments. But boy, did she love to talk about you. Rosie tugged the end of her sweater sleeves and brought her arms closer to her body. Anyway, Velvet said, you take care, honey. I hope to see you real soon. There was a pig-like snort from the other side of the door. No, Celestina, that's not for you, Velvet scolded. Footsteps trailed away until Rosie was once again surrounded by silence. Rosie stayed curled behind the door for a long time, practicing deep belly breaths and long protracted exhales until her lungs felt like deflated balloons. She imagined she was blowing out all the negative thoughts like Dr. Hume had taught her. Thoughts like, you think you stand a chance at getting over it? You can't even open your door to a neighbor bringing you food. The world isn't full of stones and diamonds. Only she knew that it was. She brought the still warm dish inside and examined the contents. It looked like a strange mixture of shepherd's pie, tuna salad, pasta, and garlic bread. The smell was inviting and the warm ceramic felt good in her palms, but her stomach was still tangled into tight knots. Still, all she had eaten that day was a Cliff Bar, and only recently had she partially regained the ability to digest complete meals. She knew her perpetually recovering body needed nourishment, not deprivation. She scooped a few spoonfuls of the concoction into a coffee mug and took it on the back porch. It tasted much better than she expected. Garlic, mushroom, pesto, butterbread, baked beans released their flavors at once in her mouth and worked their warm way down to her near-empty stomach. It made Rosie feel a little better. If Velvet turned out to be cool, maybe she'd open one of Grammy's hand-sewn cookbooks and make a sheet cake or a plate of fried green tomatoes to reciprocate. She sat cross-legged on a woven blanket and listened to the crickets begin their even song. Rosie had always loved nighttime. It calmed her when the everyday world was asleep and the strange, hidden, misunderstood came out to play. She smiled at the glimmer of fireflies dizzying their way through the yard. The wood porch was still warm from the heat of the day, and it seeped into through the blanket into her stiff legs. She inhaled the first scent of mountain laurel, heavy in the evening air. Her eyes caught tiny black dots of the first bats emerging from their nightly wanders against the pink and orange streaks of sky. One dot strayed away from the others. Rosie watched it grow in size until she could see the outline of tiny wings just overhead. The bats circled the yard once, twice, 3 times before disappearing into the twilight. Rosie couldn't help but grin. She loved bats, thought they were one of the coolest animals, the only mammal who could fly. Maybe it was a good omen when it comes so close. A cigarette butt flew over the fence and landed on Rosie's arm. She yelped, not so much from pain, but for the hole now burned into her sweater. It revealed the skin beneath, the skin she had spent many a feverish hour in detox trying to scratch and scrub away, so much that the night nurse made her wear mittens to bed like a newborn so she couldn't do further damage. As if it were possible for her to damage that skin beyond the track marks, razor cuts, permanent purple blotches of collapsed veins, the rosebud tattoo on the inside of her right wrist. Footsteps, a growl from the neighboring yard. Rosie wanted to run back into the house, but she thought, how am I ever going to survive in this world if I can't stand up for myself? What can this person possibly do to me? Besides, there's a fence between us. She crept towards the fence. She raised herself onto the bottom ledge and peered over. The woman in the next yard had already lit another cigarette. She paced in a circle, black hair bobbing in a high ponytail. She stopped when she saw Rosie and stared with startling amber eyes. Rosie felt as if the feral spirit that burned within them had grabbed her by the throat. What? Wild eyes snapped. Rosie jumped. Please don't throw cigarettes into my yard. The woman took a long drag and blew the smoke in Rosie's direction. If a little ash is your biggest problem, you have it pretty good. Rosie's fingers tightened around the top of the fence. It could start a fire, she said in a small, barely audible voice. Wild eyes stared at Rosie with the kind of look she used to get from Faith when she was little and misbehaved. The narrow eyes and furrowed lips that made 3-year-old Rosie pee in her pants. Wild eyes tossed a new cigarette over the fence. Not my problem. She went inside her house and slammed the glass sliding door shut. Rosie screamed and kicked the fence. She slammed a fist against the wood. Pain rocketed up her arm into her chest. She examined her hand. The knuckles were chapped and raw and bleeding. When she saw the tiny trickle of blood over her knuckles, she collapsed in the dirt. She wanted to lie until the ground opened up and swallowed her, digested her down until only her bones remained, to the core of the earth where they would incinerate into a million tiny points of light. But she forced herself to get up. She stumbled to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and let the water run until the mosaic-covered room filled with steam, the mirror obscured by fog. Only then did she undress. The water was almost scalding, but she didn't mind. She wanted to sear off her skin and all the memories etched into it. She scrubbed her body with a loofah until she was raw and red all over, then slopped on the almond oil soap everywhere except along the horizontal scar under her navel. She always avoided that spot. Whenever her fingers brushed against it in the shower or when getting dressed, she always felt a sharp jolt of electricity shoot through her bloodstream and pierce through her brain. It made the itch almost unbearable. She scrubbed and soaped until the water ran cold, then dried off and climbed into bed wearing just her bathrobe. The new sheets were scratchy, not the soft turquoise satin ones she had slept on as a child, and smelled too clean. She lay awake, reading Grimm and tracing her fingers over the rack of illustrations. A shadow moved across the wall. Rosie froze. She felt her belly scar throb with a dull ache like it always did when the fear stirred back up. She remembered other shadows that crept across a dark room to the mattress where she worked and slept, climbed on top of her body and crushed her with their putrid weight. Her limbs were paralyzed, heart racing, breath shallow. She tried directing her thoughts to her arms and legs to make them move, even just the tip of her little finger, but they remained lead bag heavy. The creepy crawly under the skin feeling, the itch in her veins. Sweat trickled down her brow and stung her eyes. "You okay there?" said a squeaky voice. Rosie jumped out of paralysis. She took a gulp of air. "Didn't mean to scare you," the voice again. "Can I come in?" The voice was coming from the window. "Don't worry, I'm not a serial killer," it said. "I'm not even a person, in the human sense." Rosie's legs were stiff as a corpse's, but she slung them over the side of the bed and cautiously approached the window. She twisted open the blinds. Beyond the glass, hovering at her eye level, was a free-tailed bat. "Hi," he said. "I'm Harl." Rosie stared, entranced. I don't know where you came from, but I've been totally clean for over a year," she said. "That's bombastic," said Harl, "but I assure you I'm quite real." They stared at each other through the glass. "Can I come in?" Harl said again. Rosie lifted up the window. Harl glided into the room and dangled from the still weight of the ceiling fan. "What am I doing?" Rosie said aloud. "You're surviving, silly girl," Harl squeaked. "You know, I half expected you to put up more of a fight, a bat coming into your house and all." "Trust me," said Rosie, sitting back down on the bed. "This is the least trippiest thing that's happened to me in forever." "Maybe," said Harl. "But I can tell you still believe." "Believe in what?" "Magic, of course." Rosie smiled with her eyes but not her mouth. "I always did," she said. "Now I'm not so sure." "That's okay," said Harl. "What's belief without a little doubt?" "So what?" No, let me guess," said Rosie. "You're like some kind of woo-woo spirit guide or something." Harl considered, then shook his head. "I won't call it that," he said. "But maybe we could say we're friends?" Rosie finally smiled. "Well, I need to make friends sooner or later. And I think it'd be easier to start with critters than people." Harl spread open his wings and shook with joy. Then he cocked his head at Rosie. "Do you have any bugs by chance?" Rosie laughed. "No, but you might have some luck out in the garden." Harl's eyes shimmered. "While I'm looking, be gentle with yourself," he said as he flew back into the night. Rosie lay back on the bed and took a long exhale. She was still sweating. A slight tremor shook her hands. A warm breeze drifted through the window and caressed her cheek. "Is this my normal now?" she asked the night outside. "No," she thought. "I'll never be normal." She rubbed her temples and applied gentle pressure to her eyelids. She could see tiny stars in the black and pretended she was floating on a bat's wings through space. She could never forget, she knew. But she could transform. She could make it into something of her own design. She took out a pen and a notepad from the desk. May 10th, 2011. Tonight, I am afraid of my own joy, but I will get through it. I will learn to breathe. And she fell asleep to the sound of cricket songs and the flitter of bat wings in the Austin night.